so
The
exciting.
NHL, yeah.
That 3-on-3 last night was incredible exciting.
The NHL couldn't play that speed in that size rink. I said for years that they've got to widen the rinks. It's just for injury protection and for entertainment because it's pretty hard to watch a game during the regular season and chip it in and shoot it out. It's ugly. But that game last night, those kids are small enough to be able to play that kind of game in that size rink. But you put another 3-4 inches on them, and they're not going to be able to do it.
Can you imagine if kind of on your point, Mo, about lots of NHL games, nothing seems to happen for long stretches. Can you imagine if they all started defending the way the Czechs were defending against the Russians and the U.S., where they just sort of packing down and totally they got 5 players basically inside the home plate house. Like literally the U.S. Russians would have possession for a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Nothing happened. Virtually nothing.
But Tim, that's it already a few years ago. Philadelphia against Tampa, where Tampa had 3 guys through the middle. They were doing basically the same thing as the Czechs were. Or actually, they had 1 player in front, 3 behind, and then 1 behind that.
And 1-3-1.
Where the 2 Philadelphia guys, defensemen, passed the puck back and forth between each other for a minute, and then they refused to bring the puck up the ice.
And that just about destroyed
the ridiculousness of that neutral zone trap.
That was a 1-3-1, and it just about destroyed Swedish hockey. Because in the 70s, one guy won with a bad team using that passive 1-3-1. So it became what they played in Sweden, and nobody wanted to go to the games anymore. You'd have 2 teams, not forechecking, and playing that system.
And that's one thing, is the up ice forecheck really passive. It's another thing to have 5 guys standing around in the defensive zone watching people skate around the outside. Can you imagine if like 20 NHL teams adopted that? Like, holy Christ, I wouldn't even turn the TV on anymore.
No, it is. It'll be interesting to see the rest of the way.
I think the interest
with the Czechs, and but really, boy, in the NHL, just when something happens and all of a sudden there's 4-on-4, the game changes right away. There's more open space. It creates opportunities for these one-on-one challenges. There's more scoring opportunities, and then that 3-on-3 last night. Gosh, there was some incredible challenges. There was twice a Russian player came down the ice absolutely flying with the puck, and the Swedish player without the puck was unable to keep up with him. Like, it demonstrated some incredible skills and excitement, and shit, I wasn't cheering for either team. I mean, if I had been cheering for one, the excitement level would be incredible. Anyways, that's
got it on in the
that's my speech for today.
Should be a good one tonight too. The U.S. and Sweden will be a good one, and Canada, Finland should be a good one.
I'd be interested to see how Canada respond to that kind of speed. They've got some fast players, but not as many fast players. Especially Sweden and Russia.
Morris, you mentioned Russia won, so they must have knew what they were doing, and that's sort of the bottom line of, if you win, you've done everything right. But when I watched the penalty kill of the Russians and not putting the best players out, that's where I think intuitively you've got to keep them in the game, and they wouldn't have had such a difficult time, but the Swedes took over the game considerably. So it's all about every coach. And I don't watch these games like a fan in terms of getting bored or whatever. I'm saying, who's going to do what to win the game? Do you play 5-on-5 hockey the same way? Or do you play more passive against some teams than others? Or one unit than the others? can you play them normally, even, live? The Dom in the American League, is there anybody that's weaker, much weaker, or much stronger than anybody?
Yeah, typically, and it, yeah, typically there's some teams that spend more on their farm team. Like for instance, I'll use Toronto as an example. They have players playing in their East Coast affiliate that would be like on American League teams, and they have players on the American League on one-way contracts on American League deals. So they typically have a stronger team, are more skilled, and so they're able to have that little bit of advantage. So they play like a very similar to how the big Leafs play, you know. And again, we don't play against them, but yeah, I think of like with us, we have
Oh, nice shot.
Bakersfield, like Edmonton's farm team. They've got Woodcroft there as the coach, and they play an up-tempo style of play, which really puts you on your heels and forces you to really adapt to the way they play. I guess I'm not really answering your question, Wally, in regards to if we have teams that are much stronger than others, but yeah, typically, like we play the same teams, like the same 10 teams the whole year. So like the style of play, like we know those teams down cold, and so like a couple years ago, we would try to adjust to every single team the way they played, and it was too much information for our guys, and we started to not really be able to adapt into play. So we've made a conscious effort to play our style per se, and try to dictate play through our style. That seemed to give us a little more success.
So your league is pretty balanced
For the most part, as I say, outside of like the Torontos, like the Toronto, as I say, Toronto, they have two buses of players.
Yeah.
Like when they travel around, so they're at a different level.
Wouldn't be as great
No,
as Switzerland, as you see in the World Championship. So that's why countries have to do what they do, which might not be entertaining, to be successful or to compete. Just compete respectfully to gain some respect. So I think that's going to be the bottom line. And I'm really curious because over the years, our most successful teams, especially playing on small ice and Canadian ice, were Sutter's teams, and they finished checks, deliberately finished checks. And we don't do that anymore. It's just not part of the NHL game. And I don't know that you can. And like you said, Morris, the Russian drove skate, it was a good goal. But in international hockey, they're going to question it. And you know that. It's international hockey. But in Canada, there's that big adaptation to that's what you have to adapt to. But we're now playing a different game, more of a European game. The line of physicality, it changes, it evolves. It depends on who's coaching. And back in our day, when Pat Burns took that team to Piastani and they had the riot, I think he didn't understand the refereeing and the nature of what he was getting into. And he came and we did Dave King set up a coaching conference and brought all the coaches in, world junior coaches and Western Canadian junior coaches, and he asked me to speak on them on international hockey. And I thought I was going to be a creative guy and ask a question. And so I threw out the question, how are you going to play them in Europe? Pat Burns put his hand up and he said, we're going to run them out of the rink. There went my talk. And I really had to do some stick handling because, you go into that, you're aware of the refereeing, you're aware of the kind of call that goes on last night. It doesn't bother you. If that had been called on a Canadian in that situation, I don't know how they would have reacted, but I think they know and appreciate you can control your reaction, and that I'm sure happy for the Russians that they survived it. But um, I'm looking forward to the remaining games. It's exciting watching the hockey for me, um, just to see how different teams are adapting to the other. And the USA Sweden game is absolutely intriguing. You know, it's going to be an interesting game because the Americans might play more of a Canadian game than we do. They'll make more body checks, I think, than we do. And deliberately, they'll play more aggressively. And I'm not sure where that's going to go, but it's going to be exciting to watch it. So
It's tough to play that way with the new IHF rules where if there's a 1,000 count, you can't finish your check. It's a penalty. Like it's tougher to play that kind of Pat Burns style now because the rules don't allow it.
yeah, no, I understand that. I'm not advocating Pat Burns. The Americans know where the line is, and they're finishing checks. I'm not saying run anybody, just make contact every time. And the intention is an injury or running them out of the rink or intimidation. There's that line of what is it? And the Americans, to me, aren't. They're getting into the game by playing that way mentally, and we may be picking players now that don't have that quality of finishing the checks, and it depends on who's coaching and his roster. And like Sutter would go with more aggressive players and play more aggressively, and everybody buys into what you want to do. Who's going to win is. I'm really excited about this because, yeah, I have no idea. I couldn't predict anybody to win this thing.
Hey, Wally, I agree with you that in that situation yesterday for the Russians where they had, I believe it was 4 penalties in a row in the second period that if I were in the NHL, because some of my best players would probably be a little bit older, I would get them out on the ice somewhere in that because those Russian best players, they were off the ice for about at least 10 minutes in that second period where they weren't back out. And so I do agree with you. I would do my best to get them back out there at least for a shift. Now, there is an interesting thing, though, with young players. It takes them very little time to get back into the game. Those motors are there, even though they're in neutral on the bench. When they get over the boards, it takes very little time for a young guy to get back into the game. It's like it kicks right back in. They're ready to sprint. And an older player, it's tougher. So, I mean, in this situation, I mean, Larionov, wow, I think he was really hoping that his team was going to stop taking bad penalties, like where his centerman came back through the neutral zone and kept the Swede's feet out from underneath him. Like that could have easily been a 5-minute intent to injure. So, like for a while, the Russians lost their discipline, and the Swedes, had they really wanted to win that game, they would have scored on more of those power plays.
Yeah. Morris, I videoed the. I don't know how many of you remember the Russian that took that reaction penalty, but I recorded it and I'm posting it. I was posting it while we were talking, but there's a situation where it's a totally undisciplined penalty that could have cost them the championship.
Yes.
And
Misov. He was actually the player of the game.
Yeah, and
I believe.
the line of discipline for players is really, really important. And to me, he got away with it. And Larionov got away with the not putting the best players out. It changed the whole complexion of the game. And that's the only time in all the hockey I've watched over this many years, and Tim knows my philosophy, I would rather give up a goal on the penalty kill, making sure everybody felt a part of the team on the female side, than prevent a goal, than not have a goal scored by having the same people out all the time. And that's the first time I've ever in the male game questioned not getting somebody out some of those best players out because of the way the game changed. And I've watched a lot of hockey for a lot of years. So that was my point, is the balance between managing your bench and the male side is a lot different than the female side. And I got a text from Danielle Goyette. She's not going to be able to get on. Her computer isn't working, but it's a different, I'm still totally female oriented. And I think Tom Malloy might be now too, but I'm just coming more from the female side than the male side in my assessment of the way the game's played. And I think we're beginning to play like the girls, and I'm not being critical of that. I'm saying the idea of discipline and transmitting belief and making sure everybody feels a part of the team, and don't put yourself ahead of other people and take a bad penalty like that if you're on the team. That's my point, male or female. And I think watching both games is really exciting. So, Rick Puttick and Wayne, you guys haven't said anything, but you're sure listening. And Rick, I edited about 2 minutes of your response to Tim and I debating structure versus FIO, and I'm really curious, Wayne and Rick, about your thoughts on the World Juniors and everything we've been talking about.
Can't believe it.
Go ahead, Rick.
I was waiting for you, Wayne.
Okay. Yeah, I got on a little bit late here, so I haven't heard the whole conversation. But definitely with the Finnish Czechs, that's something you're seeing like here as well, like in the Alberta Junior Hockey League. If a player doesn't have a puck, you can't finish your check. It's they're really cracking down on that just because of some of the injuries that have happened in the league. So yeah, it's player has to have the puck. As soon as the puck leaves that player's possession, you can't make contact.
I can't believe it. My recording stopped with 5 minutes left in the game.
Which game, Tom?
Last night's game.
Watching
it as we talked here.
I can download it off and send it to you if you want it. I'll put it on for the Sharks. I'll put it on Dropbox, the three of them, and so you could download it if you want.
That'd be good, because I'm guessing my PVR probably did the same thing. It's the timeline. If it goes overtime, then sometimes it shuts off.
Yeah. As soon as you guys were talking about it, I started downloading the Russia-Sweden. Russia. You said Russia-Czech, right? Was a good one.
Sweden last night.
Right, but the Russia-Sweden. But you said the Czech-Russia one. The Czech one basically going a 0-5 or. Yeah. So I'll throw those two in there.
Attacked well, though.
The Czech-Russian game was a textbook, well-coached game relative to being able to beat the Russians. And there's a different mentality. I texted Tom Malloy during that game. There's an emotional mentality in Europe when different countries play each other. And some countries hate the Russians more than any, and the Czechs probably have a bigger hate. Tom, Tom sent me a picture of a statue of two guys pissing on a Russian flag.
Oh no, they're what it is. It's in Czech. It's in Prague.
Prague.
So it's a statue at each end and a Czech flag on the ground, and these two statues are pissing on top of the Czechs.
Okay,
the Russians it's the Russians and the Germans been pissing on Czechs forever, and that's what that's all about.
Okay.
So they don't really like the Russians or the Germans.
So I related that story to my father leaving the Ukraine under the Stalin period. And when the war came, he said he feared the Russians more than the Germans. And so we have no idea the political, being Canadians, all having different different blood within us, the ethnic influence of the cultures when they play one another. And I don't think there's that hatred of the teams playing each other right now, but there could be coming down the road. Rick, what are your thoughts?
Sorry. I haven't watched anything but the Canadian games, to be honest with you. I'm more focused on what they're doing. I've just been watching as the Canadian team evolves from the easy, laissez-faire game against Germany to the way they played the Swiss. That was a dominant drubbing, a lot of purposeful play. A lot of creativity, but within a common structure and understanding of how they're going to go about their business. So I'm kind of curious to see how that transforms further tonight against the Finns, because obviously it's going to be a much better game. But if I compared the 16-2 game to the 10-0 game, it was two different teams playing on the winning side there.
If everybody here puts a coaching hat on, you're coaching the Canadians against the Finns, what would be some of your game keys in terms of how you're going to play against them? This is sort of what Hockey Alberta does a good job at with their zone camps, and when they create zone teams, they post game keys to refer to relative to the opponent they're playing, and knowing how you're going to play them before you go into the game, having scouted them closely, is really important in short-term competition like we're looking at. So I'm wearing that kind of a hat as I watch all the games. And I, quite frankly, Rick, I didn't watch the Canadian games against the other teams because they were so weak. And I watched, I didn't think we played well, and it was hard to evaluate how we played and what we did, because we literally should be able to do what we wanted to do. But boy, watching the matchups of good teams against one another. And now you're getting down to the playoffs. And if you're coaching, you've got to be thinking ahead. Every team you play, you've got to beat now in the playoff. And we could be challenged against the Czechs in that game, and I'm sure we will. So the Finns could be challenging. So anybody got any idea on game keys? How would you play them? You're the coach.
Before I would love to chat about that, Wally. That was one of the things I wanted to talk about today, but I know Mo's only got till maybe about 10 o'clock. So we should maybe hold that thought and either discuss it after or even next week. But let's let Mo get into his presentation, and so we got time for some commentary and questions afterwards, if that's okay.
Oh, no, good by me. Yeah.
One thing is, would you prefer that I do this another time when there's more coaches, or because Wally, you've heard this, Tim, you have. But if the other coaches want to hear this, I'll deliver it right now. Okay. All right, because I've been looking forward to this. By the way, Wally, the one thing I would do, and it was interesting in the game yesterday, the Russians pinched right from the get-go. Any opportunity they had to put their defense in to keep the puck in the Swedish zone, they did right off the bat. It was, and the Swedes did not. If there was, the Swedes pulled out on every play. And so it was two really different styles of how to play in the offensive zone, and the Russians really sustained a lot of pressure on the Swedes in that first period, and where it was easier for the Russians to get out of their zone and move down towards the Swedish zone, and it might have contributed to them coming out of the first period with the lead for the Russians. So that would be one. When I take a look at strategy, I would love to get the lead against the Finns. If the Finns if they do anything really, really well, they play good defensively in their zone. And if they get the lead, it can be tough for Canada to to get the lead back because the Finns defend so well. And so I'd be tempted to just pinch my defense all the time from the start, like when we're in their end, and keep the puck in that zone. And what Canada is really, really good with their big, strong players is to get that puck to the net, but also to draw penalties. So I think that's one of the key decisions for a coach to make is will we pinch our defensemen on every play, or do we only pinch when we know we're going to get the puck, or do we pull out every time? And in that Russian game, the Swedes pulled out every time. The Russians pinched every time. So I just wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I thought the Russians didn't pinch. They were a part of the offense. They scissored. They went in not with a pinch or not pinch mentality. They wanted to be first with the puck. So their D were like forwards at times.
Okay.
And pinching, the whole debate on to pinch or not to pinch, do you read pinch? You know, it's a different game. And the game that's evolving, Dominic, and I believe this has happened in the NHL generally, the defensemen that are going to not just join rushes, but scissor in an offensive zone, maintaining control, means that you're pinching both sides because you're engaging your D and allowing them to play more aggressively. I don't think the juniors, and I mentioned this to Tom in a text watching the Russians play, Larionov has them doing everything we talked about in terms of scissoring inside and scissoring outside. And we can interpret it like pinching, but I just see them as playing a more complete game with 5 players. And that's sort of...
Can I interject here?
Yeah.
What I saw as the Russians playing the old Soviet way is that F3 was high when the puck, before there was any possession gained on those loose pucks.
Yep.
And F3 was high, and like Morris said, they were pinching anything to the wall. They were pinching, and then once they got possession, then they were scissoring and all that like crazy.
Yeah.
But I thought that they could pinch because F3 was, they basically had 3 guys back at the blue line almost.
That's exactly what we're trying to do with the Danish girls as well. Play really aggressively, and when you talk about pinching, of course, you don't have possession of the puck. You're talking about scissoring. You do have possession of the puck. So they're different concepts, and sort of totally agree with Mo that as a coach, you got to decide kind of how aggressive you're going to be with your forecheck, with your D, either really aggressive pinching a lot or shrinking the ice, not really pinching, but what, kind of shrinking and playing a 2-3 forecheck, or not pinching at all, or pinching when it's appropriate, or pinching on wide rims. You got to decide all those things. But yeah, I think I would totally agree with you, Tom. I still have to watch the game.
Well, Tim, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
When a defenseman pinches, is it more advantageous to move the other defenseman behind him and have a forward come back on the far defenseman spot?
I don't know that it's more advantageous. I would say it's a choice, like whether that high forward fills in behind, or the D slides all the way across, and so I'm not sure there'd be an advantage to either. For me, I guess I might think I would prefer the defenseman to stay in the middle of the ice and the forward to fill in behind the pinching D. So you've got your D as sort of your main defensive safety valve. But again, I think that's a choice you make as a.
Dominic, what do you think?
Well, we better get to Morris pretty soon.
Okay, I'm good.
Looks like you're loading up there, Mo.
Okay.
Sorry, Wally. Go ahead, Mo.
Okay. you want to have your 2 cents before I start there, Dominic?